Hello everyone and welcome to Fishin, the podcast where we're here to discuss Modern's most competitive tribe and help the whole community become better Merfolk players. I'm Kody, I'm one of the co-hosts of the show and not Kody Smith on Twitter. We also have, as always, Matt, who you can find on Twitter as MatthewCotto8. What's going on, Matt?
I'm doing fantastic. We are recording on a Tuesday night rather than a Monday. I was out of town for the weekend, visiting my brother in Nashville. So,
Ooh.
Yeah.
Did you get some barbecue while you were there?
Actually, no. While I was there, I did nothing Nashvilleian. I went to an Irish pub, then we had Indian.
Thank you very much for listening. If you feel compelled to rate, subscribe us in whatever podcast app you find, and tell all your friends about this great Merfolk podcast. You ready for the random Merfolk?
Let's do this. I'm actually super stoked about this one.
So this one is our first non-Merfolk random Merfolk. So the random not Merfolk, I suppose. This one is a very interesting one. Do you want to read it, Matt?
I will. It's called Amphibious Kavu. It is 1 green and 2 for a creature Kavu. It's a 2/2. Whenever Amphibious Kavu blocks or becomes blocked by one or more blue and or black creatures, Amphibious Kavu gets +3/+3 till end of turn. So the reason it got flagged on the random Merfolk is because of the flavor text, which anybody who's listened to the show at all knows I absolutely love flavor text. So the flavor text is Merfolk raided the shores untroubled for years until the shores started fighting back. And the artwork is just flippin' phenomenal. It's from Plane Shift, and it has a Kavu attacking a Merfolk on the, a Merfolk, a Pearl Trident actually. But it's got like the Merfolk that are from the very first portal in the so they're not as dark as the early revised Merfolk, but it's not. So it's a little bit cartoony. Do yourself a favor, whatever magic app you use, look up Amphibious Kavu, look at the art. It's great. Wayne, England, great A, buddy. Great A.
Yeah, definitely. It's great art, and the Kavu has webbed feet, which makes it kind of a cool little, it almost looks like it could be like a distant evolutionary link to Merfolk, don't you think?
Absolutely. And you know what? We might be working on a history of Merfolk segment, so maybe we'll discuss what a Kavu is and what it has to do with Merfolk.
Yes, definitely. It would be cool if somebody were to know something about that.
Just quite possibly.
Yeah. So we have a few things to discuss before we get into the main topic, so let's kind of get through these. One of the other, you described it as serendipitous things that happened due to our delay was this morning, which is May 22nd, we got a pretty sweet reprint in the Battle Bond set.
We did. So as we tease this, I absolutely cannot stand the Battle Bond art, but oh my God, the mechanics and the reprints are grade A. Good job, Wizards.
I don't mind the art.
I can't stand it. I mean, there's a few things I like in it, and I'll probably alter it or something. But
yeah, but I mean, we're getting a very special reprint, and this is a notable one, and I definitely want to discuss this on a future finance podcast. But this is True Name Nemesis.
Yeah, so True Name Nemesis has not had a real reprint.
Well, so it's definitely never gotten a reprint, but it's never had a foil.
Yes.
So there's kind of like a plus and a minus to this because it's such a big creature in Legacy. I mean, not even non-Merfolk decks play this guy, but the thing is he is getting a foil in the set, and it's different in that it's not like it's getting a from the vault foil or a foil in a Commander Anthology set. So this isn't something that you're going to have to hurry up and grab. I'm not saying you're not going to have to grab them as you find them, but it's definitely not going to be, the rarest of rare foils to get for Legacy.
So I think this is a different conversation because I'm going to disagree with you. Um, True Name is currently a $30 card in a commander set that was overprinted. So the reason it's so
In
expensive
2014.
in 2014, but I mean, it's like the only valuable card from that because I mean, like Prosh was from that commander set and a few I can't think of a few other notables off the top of my head, but they did a second printing because it was the second commander block that came out, and because they underprinted the first one so much, they overprinted the second for the demand. But True Name is the king out of that set, and it is played in a ton of legacy decks, as you alluded to. The thing is a lot of legacy players only have one or two decks because it's so darn expensive, and a lot of them really like to pimp out their decks. Foil True Names are going to be insane. I mean, I think we're talking probably $80 to $100.
I mean, right out of the gate, definitely. I think they'll dip a little bit from that, but they will very quickly go back up. I mean, if
I get it'll also depend on how much is open to Battle Bond because it's an interesting set because it's a two-headed giant set, which isn't the most popular way to play Magic. I mean, at least Conspiracy was a draft format, which people love drafting. So,
well, this you draft and then you play two-headed giant, which actually my wife might actually want to play that set because she loves weird draft stuff. Like she liked playing Conspiracy, and I mean we never really got a chance to play Conspiracy 2. But she does like kind of weird, stuff with the draft. So that might be something I could actually get her to try.
sure,
But
no, I'm stoked. I think they hit it out of the park so far. And one thing that I do want to really point out is that the foiling process and the card stock has gotten a lot better. So we're probably not going to deal with fingers crossed foil True Names that are going to be look like boats after
yeah.
being left out for a little while.
Oh
They actually
man.
might stay flat, which means that you're actually going to be able to play them in your legacy deck, which again means the value is going to be super high.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know anyone on this podcast that's interested in foil Merfolk in any fashion, but
Someone's might be selling their child.
yeah, we'll talk about that later. We'll discuss this later. But so we had some pretty good tournament finishes for Fish this weekend. We had Blair Peter, who played Mono Blue Merfolk, a pretty stock list of Mono Blue, to a 15th place finish at the Modern Classic SCG Louisville. We also had the Milkman, who placed 8th in the Modern Challenge on Sunday. So congrats to both of you. Good job. I don't know if you...
Another mono blue list, which are
Yeah.
actually Kody and I discussed this at length at this point, but we both believe this is probably still the best out of the two Merfolk lists that are being played right now, the tropical versus the mono blue. So
Yeah.
I think they look great, and I'm seeing a 4 of Merfolk Trickster in there. So
Yep, in both lists.
yeah,
Merfolk Trickster is the truth, I think. Anyway, I think. Well, actually, no. We have one more thing to hit.
We do.
We've got a lot of upkeep triggers here at this episode. MTG Strategist on Twitter, who's at MTG_strategist, is having a little giveaway where he's handing out a casual Rakdos Demon deck, but there's nothing casual about this deck. There's lightning bolts. There's a Chandra Torch of Defiance in here. There's a Braids. There's a few Dampening Spheres in here. There's Dragon
Vexing
Skull
Devil.
Summits, Vexing Devils, a playset of Faithless Lootings. I mean, there's some unlicensed disintegrations I see. So
It's a straight up fun list. Like I actually really like the list that he had put together.
Yeah. So he's giving away this deck, and so there's 4 simple steps to do this, and we're a part of this. We didn't even ask. He just kind of included us, so that was pretty sweet of him. You find a Magic the Gathering YouTube content creator with less than 1,500 subscribers, and he has a handy list. You watch one of their...
And Merfolk Podcast might be on that list.
Yeah, Fishin, a Merfolk YouTube channel. And so you watch one of their videos and leave the comment, "You are MTG." Share that video on Twitter with the following people on the tweet: me at MTG Strategist, Chuckwagon MTG at Chuckwagon MTG, and Mark Rosewater. Put the following hashtag on the tweet: hashtag We Are MTG. The person who sends the most unique tweets, most number of different videos, by June 1st, 2018, which is coming up here pretty soon, at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, wins the entire 666 deck, the demon deck. To see full rules, go to mtgstrategist.com. So I'm gonna put the rules for this in the show notes, so that way you can have a chance at winning this deck. It's pretty sweet.
This is fantastic. This is somebody who loves the community, wants to promote small channels and small content creators, which we happen to be. So very, very, very much appreciated. And all he wants to do is help us out and help share his love of Magic, and hopefully get Magic out there for more people and have more opinions. Love the big channels, listen to the big channels a lot myself, but it's good to have dissenting opinions. It's good to have different personalities. So again, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and there's lots of great big channels, Tolarian College, Mana Source. There's way too many, Command Zone, all those guys. They're all super great, and
Brainstorm.
they do Brainstorm Brewery, Booster Tutor. Even Booster Tutor is kind of one of the smaller guys compared to the Tolarians of the world.
Jay, you're doing something wrong. They have a great show.
Yeah, Booster Tutor and Jay, keep up the great work. And I want to hear another episode. I haven't heard an episode of Cumulative Upkeep in a little bit, but you won't find a show like ours, charting to the tops of, the rafters of Teleria East. It's not gonna maybe it'll happen one day, but currently, it's fun to find a niche and to find somebody that, speaks to how you play. And you're gonna find that in the small guys.
I agree with that, because there's a few decks that I call like my pet decks that I just want to see people play all the time on YouTube, and I want to listen to it. And more often than not, I only can find like 5 or 6 videos on all of YouTube that are even worth watching. So it's kind of frustrating. We need more content creators out there. So we're spearheading the niche formats, or niche topics, and we're expanding a little bit. We're not staying super specific, but
yeah. All right, so let's go into our main topic. We're already 15 minutes in. Geez, if you stuck with us this long, thank you very much. We are discussing cards that we wish that are just so close to being good in Merfolk and Modern, but just don't quite make the list. Matt, I know we both picked out five cards and an honorable mention as well. Do you want to go ahead and get started with honorable mentions first?
Yeah, let's go ahead. So when Kody Kody came up with this topic, and I as soon as he mentioned, I'm like, yes, I'm totally in. And the thing that went to my head first was not necessarily looking towards the future, but looking towards the past and where we've been. So I actually did a bunch of research into old Modern decks. So Merfolk decks in Modern from, I had the date in my head a second ago. I think it's 2011 is when Modern became a thing. Mm-hmm. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. So old Modern decks, and then also extended decks. For those of you who don't know, extended is a format that has since been retired, but it was pre-Modern, and it essentially was a rotating format that was the most 8 recent blocks. So that's kind of where I went. And I didn't understand the rules of the game, so I actually, when I had my 5 set, I actually picked only Merfolk cards, and Kody told me I could actually pick non-Merfolk cards. So I'm like, okay, I need at least one honorable mention, because there's one that I really like from back in the day that I actually think is really close, but it's just not there. And that's Rune Snag.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Rune Snag is a counter spell. It's 1 blue and 1 of anything. Counter target spell unless target opponent pays 2. So on the surface, it's a worse mana leak. The thing about it is, it also has a subtext that says a player must pay an additional 2 for each rune snag in the graveyard. So if the first rune snag is early game and the person taps out, you pay 2, counter their spell, your rune snag goes to the graveyard. The next rune snag you play, they have to pay 4, or the spell gets countered. And then if you get a third late game, they have to pay 6, which is like just a straight up counter spell.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, even early game, it's kind of hard to play a spell and then pay 6 to let it resolve.
Or even 4 if you draw 2 early game. So it was a very powerful counter spell. It was printed in Cold Snap, so it was very powerful counter spell when it was printed in the standard format. It was played in extended. It saw some play in the early extended Merfolk decks, and again, it's just not good enough right now. But I feel it's just really close, especially if you want to play a more control-y based Merfolk with really leaning on your Aether Vials and leaving your mana up to counter.
But to be clear, this card is not modern legal.
No, it is modern legal.
Oh, it is. Snap. Oh, right. Yeah, Cold Snap. Yeah, that for some reason I always forget that one is so far removed from the rest of Ice Age block that yeah. So my honorable mention is a card that I've tested in both Tropical Merfolk and Mono Blue because it can go in either one. It's Cold Eye Selkie, and it's 1 in a hybrid Simic, so blue or green for each of those. And it's a 1/1 with Island Walk in a Merfolk Rogue. And whenever Cold Eye Selkie deals combat damage to a player, you may draw that many cards. So I mean, it sounds sweet, right? You have an island, basically unblockable guy in your deck that whenever, with lords and stuff, you're pumping his power and toughness and you're drawing lots of cards off him, but he costs 3. And I mean, we get no benefit from having the pips, I mean, except for Master of Waves. But if we're spending 3 mana, we better be doing something good with it. And I mean, Mirror Regery is barely hanging on as a reason to pay 3 mana in Merfolk. Yeah. So it's kind of one of those things that, paying 3 mana for a 1/1 doesn't cut it in Modern, and it doesn't cut it for Cold Eye Selkie.
I like that one. So we'll go to my number 5, which is one of my official picks. Another thing that I did, again, I guess there's really no rules because we didn't discuss rules, but every card I picked is modern legal. So I did not pick anything that I wish was modern legal.
Yeah, I did the same. Only cards that could be in a modern Merfolk deck, not something that we wish. If you want cards that we wish existed, then go to episode 4 where we discussed that with Corbin from Brainstorm Brewery. Yeah, go ahead, Matt. We're going to go ahead and dive into this.
Or if you want us to talk about legacy reprints, that could be in modern. That could be a future episode. But let's stick to where we're at. So the next card I picked was actually Merfolk Assassin. So Merfolk Assassin is 2 blue for a 1/2, and it has tap to destroy target creature with Island Walk. It was originally printed in the dark, but then it was reprinted as a time-shifted card in Time Spiral. So I know everybody right now is thinking, what the heck are you talking about? This card is garbage. And I can understand because I thought the same thing when I first saw this card in a sideboard list for an old school extended deck. But then I started thinking about it. It is a sideboard card, obviously, but if Merfolk goes over the top and becomes a tier 1.5 deck, this is an auto-include for the mirror match.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. You would definitely only see it in sideboards for sure, but
no, I mean it's 100% a sideboard for the mirror match if you can expect to see a lot of Merfolk players. Yeah. So it really had me thinking because some of the extended decks that I was seeing, they were playing 2 Merfolk Assassins in the sideboard. I'm like, what the heck are they doing with that? What can? Oh,
it's for the mirror.
The mirror.
Yeah.
Again, and I mean, Lord only knows if they ever bring back Changeling or Chameleon Colossus finds a home, which he's come and gone. So technically, you can give the Chameleon Colossus Island Walk because he is a Merfolk. So there are potentials for it. So the reason I picked Merfolk Assassin essentially is because if Merfolk does finally take that next step into being a very solid tiered modern deck, it will be played.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good enough reason to be included in this list. I honestly think that's better than my number 5 pick, which
I actually did
is
research. I actually tried this week.
I appreciate that, and I recognize the effort. You get a gold star,
I
30
like
gold
that.
30 gold stars, and you get a platinum star, and you don't want 6 of those. um, so my number 5 is Merfolk Sovereign. Merfolk Sovereign is 1 blue for a Merfolk. Other Merfolk creatures you control get +1/+1, and it has tap. Target Merfolk creature can't be blocked this turn. And I mean, this one is kind of one of those that people have tried to make work. In pretty much like 16 Lord deck versions of Merfolk. It's just too slow. It's just having a a, a 3-mana Lord, which we already have in Merfolk, which is less restricted on mana because it only has 1 blue in the casting cost. But also Mirror Readry just synergizes with Merfolk entering the battlefield. So that works with your Merfolk entering, from just casting them or from Aether Vialing them in. And so basically there's no reason to run this over Mirror Readry unless you just don't have them.
Yeah. So one thing I want to point out, because we forgot to mention this, is that me and Kody have no idea what each other's lists are.
Oh
So
yeah,
we're hearing this for the first time. So I'm actually really excited that he picked Merfolk Sovereign because it was one of the cards that it made the short list for mine, but it just barely did not make it. It was like probably 7, 8. The reason being is just again because I did the research. This was an auto include as a 4 of back in early modern.
Yeah, and it's not a bad card. It's just there's functionally better versions of it.
Yeah, it became obsolete.
Yeah, and so like I know people do this in like budget builds, or like if you just don't have the cards, it's definitely a card that you can slot in, and you won't be ashamed, that Merfolk Sovereign is in your deck, and I mean obviously you play this in any tribal EDH deck that you build,
Yeah.
but it's not quite there for modern.
Yeah, and you're really just playing it for the 1/1 because at this point, with all the island walking lords, the target creature cannot be blocked this turn just isn't good enough.
It's basically flavor text.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
really
'cause
have no reason to run it.
yeah, and you have to tap it too, which makes it just yeah. So
You lose a
again,
blocker. It has just enough downsides that it's just not there.
yeah.
Matt, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is actually Sajiri Merfolk.
Oh wow.
So, and this is before I heard any of our celebrity picks, which I thought was actually really fun. And we'll mention that later. So, Sajiri Merfolk is 1 blue and 1 uh, for a 2/1, and it has as long as you control planes, Sajiri Merfolk has first strike and lifelink. So, the reason why I thought this card was absolutely fantastic was actually, almost all of the extended decks were actually blue-white Merfolk decks. Uh, and the fact that I was kind of thinking, I'm like, wow, if blue-white Merfolk actually made a comeback, and let's say Stoneforge Mystic gets legalized. And I saw Nikachi did a whole video on this a couple of years ago, and I watched the whole thing. I completely agree. I think Stoneforge Mystic would actually force Merfolk to become a blue-white deck.
Mm-hmm.
So then Sajiri Merfolk becomes an all-star because it would get lifelink, and you would be able to Stoneforge in swords and things like that. It would have most likely Island Walk from the Lords that you would still be playing, and then you would be gaining life. And a lot of times Merfolk, towards the late game, you could be getting into a race, and it's very much like when I play Tron. an extra 2, 3, 4 life will make the difference between win and loss.
Yeah, and Stoneforge Mystic is a two drop, so we can vial it in pretty easily. And you're not restricted on mana as much when your creatures can be vialed in.
Correct. So
It's not a bad deck. I mean, or not a bad idea, but you're right. Like Stoneforge Mystic would need to be legalized before that was an option.
So I think, and I'm dropping this on Kody right now. I think this is a future episode that I'd like to explore, is potentially doing a blue-white deck, because I think blue-white Merfolk could be a real thing. It brings you into Path to Exile, which is better than Dismember. It's going to bring you into having Leyline of Sanctity in your sideboard, and Burning Forge Tinder, that Kithkin, where you sacrifice it and all your creatures gain pro red, so you can't be Anger of the Gods or any of those red sweepers.
Mm-hmm.
I think blue-white might actually have some fins. I'm not sold that it's anywhere close to being tier 1 or anything like that, but I think if Stoneforge Mystic got reprinted, one of the only decks I think that it could really go into, kind of like how Jace is having a problem right now finding a home in Modern, I think Stoneforge would probably have the same situation, but I think Merfolk would be a perfect slot in.
Yeah, no, it'd be definitely something to research, and with cards being much cheaper on Magic Online, that would be something that could be a little bit more easily, play tested, and Surging Merfolk would definitely be on that list, I'd say.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go into my number 4, and I really like my number 4. So my first Modern deck that I ever put together was a very janky Blister Coil Weird Storm deck. So Blister Coil Weird is a weird from Return to Ravnica, and it has an ability where if you cast an instant or sorcery, you untap him and he gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And so basically the deck played Paradise Mantles, and you would equip him with Paradise Mantles and cast a lot of instants and sorceries and just storm off. So it did have the classic storm pieces from Modern, but it also had this card, Serum Visions, which is blue.
Oh.
It's a sorcery. Draw a card, scry 2. And basically what it did in that deck was it let you, you drew a card, which you needed to keep drawing cards because it's Storm, so you need to get there. But it let you kind of set up your draws because you were going to be drawing more cards, and you could kind of, scry lands that you didn't need to the bottom. So now in Merfolk, it's a deck that Serum Visions kind of helps and doesn't help in the same swoop. Because number 1, we need a density of creatures. So our non-creature slots are very limited. And we're pretty much auto-including 4 Aether Vials in every Merfolk deck, so you really don't have a lot of space to play around with Serum Visions. Number 2, and I know Opt is now Modern legal, so that's another option, but I just like Serum Visions for nostalgia purposes.
Well, plus the promo art's so good.
Yeah, the promo art is pretty good.
Because you just have to look at it and become a 13-year-old boy and chuckle.
But yeah, so it sets up draws. It lets you get past dead draws, basically lands, late game where you don't need the lands. But at the same time, the deck needs so many creatures, and there's so many better spells that I just think Serum Visions is just not right for Merfolk right now.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, and it feels weird not playing the good cantrips in a blue deck. And I've always thought the same thing with Legacy, because Legacy Merfolk doesn't play Brainstorm or Ponder. Or Preordain, for that matter.
It also doesn't play those because there's no fetches, so there's no ways to shuffle away a bad Brainstorm.
Well, sure, but you know what I'm saying. They're technically better cantrips.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And they're not playing that, so
it's just that Merfolk, at its core is a tempo deck, and so if you take a turn off to play Serum Visions, even though it only costs 1 mana, that can put you behind just a little too far. And so you need to be able to have like Merfolk Trickster. Merfolk Trickster is kind of a perfect creature for modern Merfolk because it's a spell on a relevant body, and that's what Merfolk needs really is good spells on relevant bodies. And I said good spells. I didn't say like, game breaking spells, because I mean, as much as we would like Merfolk to win, we don't want it to be unfair.
Absolutely.
All right, what's your number 3?
So my number 3 is Coral Helm Commander.
Ooh.
So Coral Helm Commander is 2 blue for a 2/2. And he is one of the cards from
Rise of
Rise
the
of the
Eldrazi.
Eldrazi
Yeah.
that is has the level up ability. So if you get level up, for those who don't know, is it has a certain extra mana cost that you can pay anytime you can play a sorcery. You get to put counter on them, and if you get enough counters, they get additional abilities. So his level up is 1 generic mana, and if he gets to level 2 for 3, between 2 and 3, he becomes a 3/3 with flying, and if he gets to level 4 or higher, he becomes a 4/4 with flying, and other Merfolk creatures you control get +1/+1. So again, he's kind of a fattier lord that you can kind of play somewhat early, but he doesn't provide the lording abilities. He's just a vanilla 2/2, but you pay the additional 1. So it's kind of like what we were talking about before, that he's really a 2 blue and 1 for a 3/3 flyer, and then you have to pay an additional.
You have to
2
pay an
mana
additional 3 basically to make him a lord.
to make him a lord. So again,
We're not in the business of paying 5 mana for a lord, unfortunately. We have 2 mana lords. We don't need this garbage.
Exactly, and that's the thing is, once upon a time he was a 4 of. He was an auto include in Merfolk decks, but his time's unfortunately come and gone. And the big thing is that he's not just a lord though. He's a big fat lord that swings a big heavy axe. But again, it's just you're going to be using your mana for other things.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like you said, once upon a time, sure. It's not bad. It's a good place to sink your mana if you have nothing else to do with it. And then you could also just hold up your Aether Vials to, force in other Merfolk. But at the same time, it's too much.
Where I see it is you can like play him early game as just kind of a vanilla 2/2 Merfolk. And then you have your Lord of Atlantis, blah, blah, blah. Later game, you can, when you have mana available because your Aether Vials are good to go, you can start leveling them up. And then even if you lose your Lord of Atlantis and he no longer has Island Walk, he at least has flying, which then you can usually evade a lot of stuff. So, I mean, he does have a little bit more flexibility. And that's why he's actually 3 on my list. Because I can somewhat see where you could do it, but he's not a 4 of. He's not. I wouldn't even consider him a lord at this point.
Yeah.
So,
and we just have. I mean, again, Merfolk Trickster coming in as a blue with flash. It's
better.
It's just there have just been so many upgrades to the deck that Coral Helm Commander. Sorry, guy. He's like Larry Bird. He was great in his time. I know I'm cutting into your territory, Matt. He was great in his time, but there have been better players since him. Not saying that he's bad.
What's Larry Bird play?
I don't know.
So close. Just so close.
The bird. The bird is the word?
The bird is the word.
So my number 3 is pretty boring, actually. On looking back, it's a little boring. It's a Cryptic Command. So 1 blue for an instant with choose 2. Counter target spell. Return target permanent to its owner's hand. Tap all creatures your opponent control. Draw a card. Now this is a classic blue tempo Magic card. However, we are not a draw go deck. We are not a deck that needs to sit on 4 mana to play Cryptic Command. It's just unfathomable that, I mean, I could see Nikachu doing this in one of his videos of playing a mono blue Cryptic Command Merfolk deck, but it's just too slow. We need to be on our opponent. We need to be turning fish sideways, and you just can't be doing that We also just have so many ways to make our creatures unblockable that it doesn't matter. We don't need to bounce our opponent's creatures. It's just not good right now.
So I would disagree to a certain extent. There's got to be times when you're playing and you're kind of on the ropes, and it's like, oh my god, if I just had one cryptic command in my deck and I could just draw that one cryptic command right now, it would be the most amazing thing ever. Like if you were Yu-Gi-Oh, and you know how Yu-Gi-Oh would sit there in the cartoon and he'd just be like, I need this one card. Oh my god, what do you know? Guess what I drew?
What was his name actually? Yu-Gi-Oh?
His name was actually Yu-Gi-Oh. It was
Oh,
actually a
geez.
legit cartoon back when I was like, I don't know, like 15, 14, something like that.
I was into the cartoon and actually I collected the cards, but I had no idea how to play the game. There was a PS1 game that I played.
Yeah.
I played the
The
heck out
War
of.
of the Roses or whatever.
Yeah, War of the Roses and or something of the Roses.
Yeah, no, it was War of the Roses. It was okay. We were going way off.
Yeah, we need to get back on this. But anyway, you're right. Like maybe a one of, but it's definitely not something that sees widespread
If
play.
it's a one up, only if you can only summon it whenever you actually needed it,
Yeah.
and then never drew.
Yeah, but see, that's every Magic card. Pretty much any Magic card that you would put in a competitive deck, you would just like, oh man, if I could just Heart of the Cards this to the top of my library, then of course I would put it in my deck. But it's just not consistent enough. And there are games where you get choked on mana, and Merfolk can operate off of 2 lands and an Aether Vial.
Yeah.
But if you draw that cryptic command, you're gonna feel really bad.
Yeah, and the problem is if you draw too many mana, you're gonna feel really bad.
Yeah, you're just gonna draw lands and sit there, and then you go, oh, cryptic command. Oh, good.
Yeah.
So Matt, we just finished with my number 3. Please go on to your number 2.
So my number 2 is actually Sig River Cutthroat. So Sig River Cutthroat is the from Shadowmoor, and he is the hybrid mana, the blue black, and he's 2 hybrid mana, blue black. And he is a 1/3, and he has at the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 3 or more life this turn, you may draw a card. So he was played kind of fringely in the beginning of the modern Merfolk decks. And the main reason I have him so high is because I've played against him before. There was somebody in my LGS who swore by playing 1 or 2 in his deck. And the fact that you could just chip away with knocking out 3 life fairly easily in early game and draw a card, that drawing 1, 2, 3 extra cards for the Merfolk deck is backbreaking for the opponent. This card was just gas, and it got to the point where I think it was my 3rd time playing him over a couple weeks, months, whatever. And every time he dropped Sig, I'm like, oh my god, I gotta get rid of that guy, because he's going to start getting his card draw engine going and just crushing me. And even when he wasn't drawing a ton of cards, it was still a 1/3, which you play 1 lower, he's a 2/4 at a bolt range. So I mean, it was just, he was a pain to deal with.
Yeah, it's definitely a good Magic card, but I can see why it's not quite there.
Just not quite there. Like if it was anytime a creature deals damage, draw a card, then auto include. But the 3 or more is what really.
Yeah, the fact he doesn't have 3 power himself kind of deters from that.
But there's no way he'd be a 3/3 for 2 mana.
No. I mean, he could be a 3/1 for 2 mana.
Sure.
And I mean, either way, he's as a 1/3 or a 3/1, he's in bolt range, so it's not like that changes a whole lot.
Fair.
But at least him having 3 power on his own body means that he draws cards himself at least.
True.
And but you're right. Like just if you've got a Sig out. I mean, it's a legendary creature, so you can't have more than 1 anyway. And you get a couple lords out. All they have to do is just bolt a lord, to drop your whole team's power, and then you've got a pretty underwhelming 1/3.
Exactly.
That's the downside of it. So against Burn, I could definitely see not playing this guy.
Yeah, but again, it's one of those things when even so, if he's drawing you 1 or 2 extra cards, the fact that the Merfolk deck doesn't draw that many cards outside of Silvergill Adept, I mean, it's incredibly helpful. So again,
Yeah,
I he's not there. He's close.
yeah, he's close. All right, so my number 2 is Grimoire Thief. It's blue for a Merfolk Rogue from Morningtide, and he's a 2/2. Whenever Grimoire Thief becomes tapped, remove the top 3 cards of target opponent's library from the game face down. You may look at cards removed from the game with Grimoire Thief. Blue, sacrifice Grimoire Thief, turn all cards removed from the game with Grimoire Thief face up, counter all spells with those names.
Oh, that's neat.
It's a very odd magic card, and I think it would be good against like Storm or maybe against Dredge. Like, just I mean,
Well,
obviously,
not just Dredge, because Dredge doesn't cast anything.
well, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, but I mean, like, at least I mean, if Storm ever got out of control, like that would be a fun way to do it. But I
What's
think
the mana cost again?
blue.
So Storm off too quickly for that?
It's possible, and that's kind of why it's out of range.
Yeah,
That
I'm trying. I agree with you. It sounds so interesting, but even like, and I see what you're going with the Storm and the Dredge and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, yeah, I mean, close, but I think it would actually still work, and close, but I think it would actually still work type of thing.
Yeah, because we don't really have. I mean, I guess now we have that. We have Mox Amber.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe, but at the same time, it's like you don't want to have maybes in a competitive modern deck. Like that's not how competitive modern decks work.
Unless you're Saffron Olive.
Yeah, unless you're Saffron Olive or Pleasant Kenobi, uh, then you have lots of maybes in your deck, and you either you know, burn out like a terrible garbage fire, or rise from the ashes of that garbage fire, and as a wonderful phoenix chicken. But yeah, it's just not there. The other thing it says counter all spells with those names. So I don't that doesn't hit creatures, right?
No, creatures or spells.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, then it would hit creatures. Yeah, it's like you said, it's too slow. Unfortunately, it costs 2 blue, so you have to wait till at least turn 2 to get it out. Then you have to wait until at least turn 3, and if Storm is going off, you could be having a bad day. I mean, the Storm runs Bolt. Like that's the other thing, is they could just go, we can't leave that alone. All right. So Matt, what is your number 1?
So I'm actually kind of excited because, again, Kody and I did not exchange lists. This is all we're hearing for the first time, and I don't think we'll have any overlap. So I think this is really cool. But my number 1 is actually OG Sig River Guide.
Yep.
So Sig River Guide is 1 blue, 1 white for a 2/2 with Island Walk, and he has 1 white, 1 blue colon. Target Merfolk you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. So the reason why he's my number 1 is because, and I alluded to this earlier when I was talking about Sejiri Merfolk. The blue-white Merfolk deck list from the extended decks that I was reading, he was an auto-include of at least 2. And I really think that if blue-white Merfolk became a thing, which it's a Stoneforge away, or maybe just 1 card away that hasn't been even printed yet, that Sig is right back in there, because he does have Island Walk automatically, so you don't necessarily need a Lord in there. He is a 2/2 for 1 blue, 1 white, and if you're building the blue-white mana base, it's really not hard with the Brandywine Hub. And then he also can attack, and you can still use his ability to, if somebody's trying to bolt you or do whatever to one of your Merfolk, fatal push it, whatever, you can give it protection of that color, which ends up being one of the biggest issues that Merfolk has, but with some spot removal or mass removal. And as I said before, you can play with white, have a lot more things that can protect your creatures. So that's why Sig's my number 1, because out of all my cards that I picked, I think he has the most realistic chance of actually seeing play again, if blue-white Merfolk become a thing.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I agree. Like I think that if Stoneforge Mystic becomes unbanned, then you're right. Like this mythical blue white Merfolk swords-ish deck could exist, with like one or two equipment in the deck. And
I mean, a Batterskull and a sword.
yeah, a Batterskull and a Jit or something like that. Or Jit's banned, isn't it?
Banned, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like you'd just put in like Sword of Feast and Famine. I mean,
or Fire and Ice is the go-to usually.
Yeah, Fire and Ice would definitely probably be better, but I could see Feast and Famine also being good. Just those are the kind of more common removal spells of modern. But it's one of those things.
Shadows, getting a creature out of the graveyard. But anyway, yeah, I mean, you would grab a sword and a Batterskull or two swords or whatever.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Like it's one of those things that it's just so close. I think that you're right. I think it's good. It's a good pick for your number one.
Yeah, it's not there currently. I did a lot of research, and I found actually I found a big subgroup of people who play blue white Merfolk still and swear by it. So that's actually what kind of got my interest peaked. I'm like, oh my goodness, it was a really impressive deck, enough where they needed to play Merfolk Assassin for the mirror match. And there's still people out there playing it and swearing by it. I'm not gonna jump ship. I mean, it's super fringe. The mono blue is still the best in my opinion, but it is a Stoneforge unbanning away. Which now that Jace has been unbanned, I think Wizards might start getting a little frisky, and I think Stoneforge is 100% fine. I don't think I'll see much play at all. Again, outside of maybe a blue white Merfolk, or I mean, it has potential that if we go back to Lorwyn and we see blue white Merfolk again, or even just a blue white Merfolk in the future outside of Lorwyn, that it could push the deck over the top. And we have the mana base already for it with the Brandywine hubs.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's we already have a blue white Merfolk land, and it's not something that is outside the realm of possibility. All right, you ready for my number one?
Let's do this.
This is going to be, I think you're going to like this one.
What you got?
Ancestral Vision.
Oh, God, I do love that card.
Ancestral Vision is pretty good. So Ancestral Vision has no mana cost. It's a sorcery. It specifically states Ancestral Vision is blue. Suspend 4 for a blue mana. So rather than play this card from your hand, pay blue and remove it from the game with 4 time counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter. When the last is removed, play it without paying its mana cost. Target player draws 3 cards. Now, this card is so powerful.
It is really, really good.
It's really dumb.
I mean, it's a fair version of the most powerful blue spell ever printed,
which is still a little bit more powerful than most Magic cards.
and we're talking about Ancestral Visions, obviously.
Yeah, and so.
Or I'm sorry, Ancestral Recall.
Yeah, Ancestral Recall. So for me, the reason that Ancestral Vision, I mean, it just recently got unbanned, so it's still kind of very fresh in the modern landscape.
Mm-hmm.
But just as it's still not doing anything in modern, I think it's just too slow. I mean, even if you suspend this turn 1, I mean, what else are you doing? You're delaying your Aether Vial. You're delaying a Curse Catcher if you still play Curse Catchers. And you have to wait 4 turns to draw those cards.
So I'm thinking on the fly, because again, I hadn't heard this before. I didn't even think about this. But the only way I could see this working is 1, you would actually not play Aether Vial, and 2, you would have to have one in your opening hand. So you would be casting Merfolk traditionally, and then restocking on turn 4.
Yeah. I mean, that's not like terrible.
It's really good, but I mean, I played Ancestral Visions before in my Grixis control deck, and you don't get it every opening hand.
Nope. And basically,
just like your Aether Vial, you don't get it every opening hand. And then Ancestral Visions late game is the worst draw ever. It's worse than Vial. Because at least
Yeah,
Vile's doing something.
yeah. At least 2 turns into Vile, you can do something with it. You don't have to wait 4 turns like you have to wait with
Yeah.
and there's no way. I mean, there's no ways that are good that you can pull time counters off of off of cards in
Yeah.
exile. So we're just not going to worry about it.
You're not going to be playing As Foretold Ancestral Visions Merfolk deck.
Yeah, but I think we both had pretty cool picks for cards that we wish were good enough for Merfolk in Modern. We had a few pretty good community answers from
Yeah,
content.
Kody reached out on Twitter, asking a few content creators and the public at large, what their choices would be. And I agree with you. We had some great picks.
So
Some I didn't even think about.
yeah, so Nikachu and actually a few other people. I also asked on Reddit and the Facebook group or the Facebook page. We're on facebook.com/fishcastmtg, so you can reach out to us there if you're on Facebook.
So one thing I want to say is before their community picks came in, I had mine done and I left mine set in stone. So there's gonna be some overlap that I thought was great because a lot of mine were actually picked by the community. And there
Yeah,
were actually a few on here that I'm like, oh my God, I completely forgot about that one. That 100% would have made my list.
yeah, and I do have one on here as well. But so one popular one that Nikachu and a few others said was Void Mage Prodigy, which is blue for a 2/1 human wizard. It has blue sacrifice a wizard, counter target spell, and
And more.
morph for blue. so I mean, you could cast this as a morph, but more importantly, it's Aether Viable, Aether Vial Able. So you vial it in and then you counter a spell. It's just it's a better curse catcher.
Yeah, no,
It just costs
it's
more.
just so close. And people have been trying to make this card work since oh God, this is a world's champion card, and I cannot remember the world's champion name. I feel bad about that. But
It's also just like the fact that sometimes it's just a 4 mana counter spell
yeah.
that can get countered itself.
But so many Merfolk are wizards too.
Yeah.
So
So,
you could
but
vial it in and not even just blow him up. You can blow up another Merfolk you don't need at the time.
then that also kind of defeats the other way that Merfolk wins is by its creatures. So
Hence why
you're kind of
it's so close.
yeah, you're wiping your own board basically.
Yeah.
Next, we reached out to our buddy Jay from Cumulative Upkeep, and she gave me Stony Brook Schoolmaster, which is a white Merfolk, 2 and a white for a 1/2 Merfolk wizard. And whenever Stony Brook Schoolmaster becomes tapped, you may put a 1/1 blue Merfolk wizard creature token into play.
So this was actually the card that when she mentioned it is the I'm like, oh my God, this totally should have made my list. Again, I'm not going to say where it would have gone because I don't know because I do like my list still the way it was, but the fact that there's just so many infinite combos you can do with this thing too. This guy's an all-star. Yeah, if he was one white and one, then I it's so much closer. It's just the 3 mana cost in Merfolk is just really rough to deal with.
Yeah, in Modern, I mean, in Commander, this is just a fun card.
Oh, Commander, this is great. I mean, you got to play it if you're. I mean, obviously, if you're playing blue white Merfolk, this is going in there.
Yeah. She also let me see if I can find it real quick. She mentioned it with another card. It's Marrow Commerce, I believe. Yeah, it's 1 in a blue. It's a tribal enchantment Merfolk, and at the end of your turn, untap all Merfolk you control. It's just a way to kind of chain it together. If you have a way to force tap your creatures with like I don't know Cryptolith Right, something to generate a bunch of dudes.
That's fun.
Corbin actually picked 2 of yours. He picked Sergi Corbin Hostler from Brainstorm Brewery Podcast. Picked Sergi Merfolk and Coralhelm Commander. So how does it feel to be on his side?
I thought that was super funny because again, my list was set in stone when I started reading through these. I'm like, me and Corbin are like totally on the same page with these things. Again, I'm curious if his reasons are the same as mine. So I doubt it, but again.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's kind of notorious for not listening to too many podcasts, but I'll have to see if I can squeak an answer out of him.
Yeah. Next time you talk to him, give him a holler and ask for me.
Yeah.
Again, I assume his Coral Home Commander is the exact same reason. The fact that he pulled Sajiri Merfolk, which I thought was going to be my completely out of nowhere, no one was thinking about it type thing, as I lean into my blue-white Merfolk future deck.
Yeah.
Um, and the fact that he's pulling, I'm like, that's just great. That's good stuff.
And turn one Glistener Elf, who's a great YouTuber, mostly plays, you guessed it, Infect. He reached out with Seafloracle, or Seafloor Oracle. I just call it Seafloracle. I think that's a better name for it. It's 2 blue for a Merfolk Wizard. That's a 2/3, so not too bad of stats there. And whenever a Merfolk you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. I think this is actually interesting because, I mean, you just drop it and then swing with all your Island Walk dudes, and you just draw a bunch of cards.
Is this maybe even a one of? I mean, is this out of all the stuff we've talked about? Is this the closest?
I don't know. It's 4 mana, and I mean,
I understand, but
and it eats a spot from Master Waves, which I know is your favorite card in the deck.
it is, and I wasn't gonna say anything, but yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking it would go.
It's just like, I don't know. It seems a little fragile because it can get fatal pushed.
Before you get your card draw, yeah.
Yeah, so you pay your 4 mana, you drop this guy, you swing with your team, and they fatal push it.
Not even fatal push, because fatal push you still at least have to get revolt.
Well, yeah, but they just fetch revolt or fetch push it.
Yeah, but by turn 4, I mean that's not necessarily a for sure thing in Modern, but the
I might have to test it as a one of.
I mean, with the butt of 3, it's in bolt range. Yeah, it's close though. That's a good.
That's a very good pick. So a few that we're just gonna run through real quick. Aerostar 250 on Reddit said Void Mage Prodigy, but basically for the same reason. It's fun to violin, but it's most often a 4 mana onboard counter that kills your own creatures. So we're not interested in that. Grumblecast picked Merfolk Sovereign for the same reason I did. Too slow and no Island Walk. And let's see here. Rhino_Za picked Trait Doctoring, which is a very interesting card. I think we should read that one. It's
I've never even seen this card before.
Yeah, it's from Dragon's Maze, so I don't blame you. It's blue for a sorcery. Change the text of target permanent by replacing all instances of one color word with another one, or a basic land type with another until end of turn. But it has Cipher, which is then you may exile the spell card encoded on a creature you control. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, its controller may cast a copy of the encoded card without paying its mana cost. And therein lies the rub. You have to deal the damage to make a land an island. So therefore it turns off it doesn't fix your Island Walk problem if you don't have Spreading Seas.
Oh God, I forgot about. I mean, again, I've used Cipher before in Commander and things like that, but yeah, you have to deal. God, that is like 3 words away from being just like an auto.
Like whenever a creature attacks, Cipher would be busted though.
Who was that? Rhino. That is a great pick, man.
Yeah.
I'm slow clapping for you right now.
Koala Dolphin said Thassa, God of the Sea. It's underwhelming in most matchups, and he also picked Reflector Mage, saying if Reflector Mage was a Merfolk, he would play blue-white Merfolk and never look back. I totally agree.
And Thassa was on my short list, by the way.
Yeah, Thassa is not terrible, but I mean, the scry is not as, only scrying 1 isn't great. Plus, you're taking your 3rd turn off. I mean, I guess you could vial it in, but
yeah. So she initially didn't make my list because she wasn't a Merfolk, and then when you explained to me how you were playing your rules, I went back and was trying to force her in, but she was on the short list of the cuts.
Yeah. Let's see here. Gibby MTG picked Batterskull and Umezawa's Jet, but both are a little too slow for Merfolk. And again, Jet is banned.
Yeah.
So
again, until my hypothetical blue-white Merfolk with Stoneforge Mystic actually, I guess it's kind of neat to choose, but I had the idea and I just found out that he had it first, and that makes sense because he's like Mr. Merfolk. So
yeah, but Batterskull is just a sweet Magic card in any format.
It's not even being played right now.
No.
It's not even if Stoneforge existed, it wouldn't be that good because we have Culligan's Command.
Yeah, no, that's basically why I think Stoneforge Mystic, even if it got unbanned, it wouldn't be.
It's fine.
It's just fine. It's not the overpowered thing that it was in the
There's
standard.
so much artifact destruction in sideboarding right now. Yeah.
The last one I want to hit is Batman's backpack on Reddit. Also put Grimoire Thief in there, which is the same one that I picked that counters spells. You exile cards and counter spells. There's a few others. Merfolk Assassin got mentioned basically as we went to record. There's just a lot of stuff that kind of was duplicates, which means we're all pretty much on the same page. There's lots of cards that we'd love to play, and they're just not there.
Again, and that's not to say don't play them. When we talked about with Jay when she was on, probably closer to 2 months ago now. Been way too long. Maybe we need to have her back soon.
Yeah.
But anyway, play what you want. Play what's fun. You don't have to play the stock list. If you think you can break it, break it. The reason Humans is so good right now is because somebody decided, I think this could be really good in this format right now, and didn't listen to everybody telling them that, no, you have to play a stock deck to be competitive.
Yeah, and Humans is doing really, really, really good
Humans
right now.
Is probably the best deck in Modern right now, or at least top 5.
It's definitely up there. It shows up in multiples and top 16, so it's definitely giving it a good go.
It's really, really good.
It's really good. Thank you very much for sticking around with us on this exceptionally long episode of Fishin' and Merfolk Podcast. If you want to reach out to us, you can contact us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as FishcastMTG. Personally, on Twitter, I am at @NotCodySmith. And Matt, where are you at?
Matthew Caudill 8. Hit me up.
Just as usual, we're not going anywhere. If you have a long form question, feel free to email us at fishcastmtg@gmail.com. That or any type of inquiry that you might have, feel free to email us there. Our cover art was made by Tessa and Hunter Pruitt. And remember that if you like what we're doing here, please rate, subscribe in the Apple, Google Play podcast app stores, as well as whatever podcast catcher you use to listen to us. Find us on YouTube as just Google Fishin' a Merfolk YouTube channel. And we're also on Patreon, patreon.com/fishcastmtg, where you can monetarily support this podcast. Even $1 a month helps us get better. And we're working on...
If you're tired of me sounding like garbage, the next thing we're going to do is get me a real microphone, so I don't have to keep trying to make out with Kody via the Skype as I try to talk into this tiny mic I have. I've already told Kody that I will match any donation dollar for dollar. So I think we're actually fairly close as it is. So,
after this next month, we should get there.
Yeah, so thank you guys very much. Really, really appreciate it. And looking forward to not sounding like garbage for y'all.
And if you want a free way to support us that costs you literally $0 find us on YouTube, find us on whatever podcast app, follow us on Twitter, rate and subscribe, and click the little bell icon so you can stay notified of videos that come out. We've got some pretty cool stuff coming up. I've recorded some videos recently that just need to get edited, and I'll be throwing those up on the YouTube here soon. Thank you very much for listening. We will see you next week.
Have a good night, everyone.